And the lesson from Lebanon as well is it can happen overnight. And he notes that for the past 20 years, prior to 2019, Lebanese people didn't have problems with devaluation. Monday, October 18th, 2021, Maneko 64, Home of Alternative Economics and Contrarian Views. Billy is okay. He was just fast asleep. I didn't want to wake him up. I'm letting him have a lie-in this morning. So today, I want to look at Lebanon. I made a video in July of last year entitled, Lebanon is the first domino to fall in the fiat currency reset. And this is what I said in the comment section or in the description of the video. I said today I will look at what is happening in Lebanon and how its banking sector along with its economy has collapsed in the last year or so. The banking sector in Lebanon, like here in the UK, had been the jewel in the crown of the economy. My conclusion is that Lebanon and the implosion of its currency, banking sector and the economy is a harbinger for the rest of the world, and especially the major Western economies like the US, the UK, and the Eurozone. And it's amazing that what was happening or is happening even now in Lebanon is starting to happen here. We're starting to have shortages at the shelves. We're starting to have supply chain problems. We could have rationing of energy or even blackouts this winter, not only in the UK, but everywhere around the world. We've seen in China, they're starting to have blackouts. And why am I speaking about Lebanon again today? Well, because I want to recommend a really great interview that Silver Bullion TV did on the 16th of October with Ali Chehade. He's a Lebanese video producer. I actually haven't finished watching it. I started watching it last night. But it's very long. It's an hour and a half. I think I've watched it up until the hour mark. But this Lebanese chap is very knowledgeable, speaks very good English, and he actually has learned a lot since September 2019. And that's the day that he said everything changed. Of course, he couldn't see it, that it was changing, nor could 99.9% of Lebanese. Only the very top, the people at the top bankers, the top business people, the people with connections to the central bank, they could see what was going on. And there's some great lessons to learn from the situation in Lebanon, not just about inflation, but about bankers and their true motives. It's quite amazing, and I still think it's going to happen here. It might not be as bad as Lebanon in terms of the haircut that we get in our currencies, but we're already starting to see. We're starting to see the inflation. And one thing you'll learn about inflation with Mr. Chehade, and I've said that many times, because sound money, of course, which is the opposite of inflation, when you have sound money in an economy, it's honest weights and measures. All inflation is theft. That's all it is, by the government and the central bankers. And unfortunately, that's who that's the people that are in charge, the bankers and the governments. They're one and the same. I can prove that to you here as well in the UK. I spoke about this in my live stream yesterday, that the Prime Minister and the Queen are gonna welcome Wall Street tonight and tomorrow. And of course, we're gonna pay for their fancy dinner. So it says here in the Telegraph, and this story came out late on Friday, And in the last 72 hours, the only thing they've talked about is about an MP that's been killed or assassinated. Of course, there's not much focus on this. And I think this is very important because it shows private businesses meeting in secret with not only the head of the government, but the head of state in this country. The Telegraph makes this seem that this is a good thing, that they're meeting to help global Britain. But I think there's more sinister things behind the scenes. If it's really to help Britain, why don't they invite the public to this so they can talk to Mr. Diamond or Larry Fink of BlackRock? And before I go further into this video, I'd like to recommend another video I did in July of this year, BlackRock's Going Direct Reset and the Financial Coup d'etat. And it's happening not just in the US, it's happening in the UK, it's happening in Europe. Look who's in charge in Italy. It's a banker, Draghi. But yeah, highly recommend. I did an interview with John Titus, who has studied what he calls the mafiocracy, Wall Street and the governments. And I highly recommend his YouTube channel as well, Best Evidence. And you'll see what the bankers are all about, what inflation is all about. That inflation is basically theft. So back to the article here about Prime Minister invites world's top business leaders to Downing Street dinner. The headline should really read, Prime Minister invites world's top bankers and financiers. So it says, Boris Johnson is to host an intimate dinner with some of the world's most powerful executives, including Bill Gates for some reason, and JP Morgan boss Jamie Dimon, as he seeks to establish global Britain on the world economic stage. I think this is just for public consumption, really. And he's going to have us pay, of course. I'm sure the taxpayers paying for this. He's hiring a 3-star Michelin chef to cook for the banksters, as if they needed, as if they needed us to pay for it, right? So who are the other people that are coming? Well, among the elite attending Mr. Johnson's dinner in Downing Street also include Stephen Schwarzman, the co-founder of private equity firm Blackstone, Barclays Bank chief Jess Staley. I think he's a friend of Jeffrey Epstein as well, Mr. Staley, from what I've seen. Santander chairman, that's the Spanish bank, Ana Botín, and Larry Fink, the head of investment giant BlackRock. Also the boss of Goldman Sachs, David Solomon, is attending. So all the big bankers are attending. And I wouldn't be surprised if the governor of the Bank of England is there too, and many other financiers. So now you know what it's all about. And back to the interview with the fellow from Beirut in Lebanon. One interesting thing he said was that prior to September 2019, and it's interesting that date, I think he said it was 13th of September. He said it as if it was really significant, because to remember a date like that. And it's interesting because that's when the repo crisis started as well on Wall Street. The Lebanese pound, he said, or lira, the Lebanese lira, he said it was fixed versus the dollar for as long as he could remember. He's been back to Lebanon since the beginning of the 2000s. So $1 was about 1,500 Lebanese lira. And he said that the banks accepted dollars. People use dollars and the lira interchangeably. So it was almost like the same. And a lot of people kept their money in lira in the bank or in dollars. But after September 2019, you started seeing that rate go up, like from 1,500, he said, I think, to 1,700. And he spoke about the fact that he had 100 million lira in savings, which at the time was worth about $66,000. And all of a sudden, it was only worth 40,000. And he was debating apparently with his friends whether to change it back or change it all to dollars or just leave it there, because they couldn't believe that this was happening. And he didn't mention anything more about his 100 million. But the way he spoke about it doesn't bode very well. It's almost as if he left it there. So now, with the Lebanese lira worth about 22,000, that 100 million is worth less than $5,000. So hopefully he exchanged it before. But he also talks about the fact that they closed the banks in September of 2019 for like 3 weeks, and you couldn't take your money out, or you had to give loads of reasons why you could take your own money out. And that's why I've said many times, your money in the bank is not really yours. It's an unsecured loan. And he said that prior to September 2019, it was very easy. $80 was just very easy to take out, but afterwards you couldn't. And you couldn't take dollars anymore. The other interesting thing that I've noticed is if you go onto Google and you do USD to Lebanese lira, they're still giving you the official rate. And it's amazing that the same bankers who were in charge then are still in charge now. The head of the central bank of Lebanon, I've read about the guy, and I think he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Most of his money, of course, has gone to France and Switzerland. He also noted how the very wealthy knew when this was coming. They were able to get their dollars out, but you couldn't get your dollars. So basically, they bailed you in. They stole people's money in Lebanon, and it's going to happen here. It's going to happen everywhere in the Western world. They did it in Cyprus some years ago as well. It's called a bail-in. It's a euphemism for theft. And that's why I keep telling people, having precious metals outside the system is about protecting the integrity of your savings. It's protecting it from theft from the bankers, because if you think you've got anything with the bankers, think again. And Lebanon is a prime example for it. But back to the US dollar to Lebanese lira, they still got it at 1,500 roughly. They still got the official rate, but it's a lie. It just goes to show how the prices that we see on the screen, be it of precious metals or currencies or even the stock market, it's all a lie. It's a facade. And I think it's going to be pretty, how can I say, life-changing. I mean, Mr. Chehade, he explains that prior to September 2019, Lebanon wasn't the most stable place. So I guess it's not very surprising for them, but it is actually. He said it's it's getting pretty bad right now. But for us here in the West, I think it's going to be a big shock that it's going to happen here. And what's going to be the trigger? Well, I don't know. Some kind of liquidity crisis where the banks have to basically take your money, because the markets will be in turmoil. A little bit like last year. And I noticed last year that the British pound was going the way of the Lebanese lira back in the month of March. We went from above 131 all the way down to 114 in a matter of a week or two. And then, of course, we had the Federal Reserve and the Americans I wouldn't even consider the Americans. We had the bankers on Wall Street bail us out with a swap line so that the Bank of England could actually have dollars from the Fed to sell them and buy pounds. And that's the only reason why we haven't gone the way of Lebanon yet. And the other interesting thing that I think is very similar, unfortunately, with Lebanon for the UK and London is that we're highly dependent on other economies. I think our international trade is 65% of our GDP, so we import a lot. And this guy was saying that Lebanon is dependent on trade, it's dependent on its currency, and so are we in the UK. So I don't think it bodes well for us, but it doesn't bode well for the whole world because it's going to happen in the US as well. And it's interesting to look at Mr. Chehade's perspective that for Lebanese, having dollars is a great thing because compared to their currency, it's almost like gold, as good as gold, which it isn't, of course, we know that. But can you imagine how the world would be impacted when the dollar goes? The only thing that will really be useful will probably be silver, really, because gold will be too valuable, as Mr. Chehade said. It's a store of wealth. And if he had that 100 million lira in gold stacked outside the banking system, that $66,000 equivalent, he'd still have that. So, but he talks about the fact that for day-to-day business or day-to-day transactions, you need currency. But he says that now it's getting really bad because even when you have the currency or the money, you can't get much. So that's what I fear as well. It's not going to be pretty. And if it could happen in Lebanon, and I know Lebanon has been a troubled country for the last 50 years or so, but it used to be considered the Switzerland of the Middle East. So it's still a relatively wealthy country, I would say. So it could very well happen here and in other places in the West or all over the world. I think it's unfortunately it's going to be a worldwide phenomenon. And there's a lot to learn from that interview. And the fact that inflation is not the rise in CPI. Inflation is, basically theft. When central bankers create too much money and credit, when they create Ponzi schemes, and they start buying out real things, and you get caught holding the bag, and they can manipulate things, but not forever. And the lesson from Lebanon as well is it can happen overnight. And he notes that for the past 20 years, prior to 2019, Lebanese people didn't have problems with devaluation. So I think it's a bad omen, and I think it's a very good lesson to learn. So with that, let's quickly look at where the markets are this morning. It's 8:30 a.m. London time. We've got spot gold. And think of the spot gold price as the official price that we're still seeing the Lebanese lira at 1,500 versus the dollar, even though the dollar is worth really in the real black market, they call it 22,000, right? So right now we've got spot gold at 1766. It's unchanged. Range has been 1772 to 1762. Silver is up 2 cents at 23.32. Range has been 23.47 to 23.15. The Dow future is down 100 points. The NASDAQ 100 future is down 70. S&P is down 15. FTSE is down 15 points as well at 72.20. What about these Banksters currencies, fiat currencies. Well, sterling is down slightly at 137.42. The euro is down 0.1% at 115.83. Dollar is unchanged versus the yen at 114.27. Dollar is down slightly versus the yuan at 643.20. Aussie dollar is down 0.2% at 74.05. And the US dollar is up 0.25% versus the Canadian dollar, 123.92. And the Kiwi dollar is unchanged at 70.66. And now to the general commodities. And that's going to be very important, because if you think of Beirut or Lebanon, the main thing to look at for the Lebanese, or has been since September 2019, is the exchange rate to the dollar. But for the reserve currency, the main thing to look at is its value versus real things, because it's the reserve currency. And many people, I see them comment that I don't see the dollar collapsing. What are you talking about? Well, because all the other fiat currencies are collapsing as well. So they look strong against each other, or at different times, strong and weaker. But what we need to really keep our eyes on is the commodity markets, especially energy, which is the lifeblood of the economy. So WTI crude is up almost 1% at 82.50. The high has been 83.13, low 81.59. So it's not Brent, it's WTI. So we're way past that 80 level. Brent is up 0.5% at 84.50. So WTI is actually catching up a little bit with Brent. We've got high-grade copper up 0.75% at 4.74. It has been as high as 4.80. What about natural gas? Yes, it is coming off a little bit here. It's still relatively high at 5.30. It's down about 4%. I don't think this is over by any stretch. And I think, yes, looking at commodities is the way to look at how the reserve currency is doing. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, and all these other platforms below here. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.